Jewish woman, a patron in a California restaurant, just denied the use of a bathroom because she was a Jew. Jewish stores are being boycotted, protested, blockaded, and damaged, just like the brown shirts, the Nazis.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the Books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show. I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of 200 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including my bestseller, IBM and the Holocaust, and The Farhud, Roots of the Arab-Nazi Alliance in the Holocaust, which described a bloody and animalistic massacre in Hebron in 1929, and then again in Baghdad in 1941, both similar to the ones we saw unfold in Israel October 7th, exactly 2 months ago. If you like our show's content, spread the word. Subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Please know that this show is completely a worldwide volunteer effort and totally unmonetized, as it is the end of the year and the giving season has come upon us. Take a minute. Help us maintain our extremely high level of excellence and documentation. Our world is threatened by ignorance and misinformation, and we are at the tip of the spear of facts in context. Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Thank you. And now we have solidarity today from many national organizations, such as the Emerson Family Foundation, the Fuel Freedom Foundation, the Israel on Campus Coalition, as well as Stand With Us, JNS, the Israeli American Council, EMET, American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, ZOA Michigan, the Gross Family Center, Americans for Peace and Tolerance, and plenty more. Thank you, everyone. That said, I only speak for myself and for history. Today's episode is sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the just-released third edition of Ken Abramowitz's best-selling and painfully predictive book, The Multi-Front War. Today, we welcome guests from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages, Newton, Mass, Chicago, and Tampa Bay. I'll see you soon. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from Australia and New Zealand, Holland once again, France, Italy. I see Spain, Germany, Guten Tag, Morocco, Great Britain, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, El Salvador, India, and Israel, our favorite, plus other countries. If you have a question limited to today's horrible topic, place one short sentence in Zoom's QA feature. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast-growing, enjoying many tens of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without partisanship to a fragmented world seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present very, very tense, and a future still uncertain. And remember, we will not be censored. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. We'll get to our reality-injecting episode in a few minutes after some brief announcements. Today, Jews everywhere are celebrating the first night of Hanukkah. We light a candle to commemorate the Jews who courageously fought some 2,500 years ago against oppressors and prevailed. Very shortly, the rest of the world will celebrate the birth of a Reformed Jewish rabbi named Jesus Christ in the holiday known as Christmas. Despite these two global observances, the idiots on our campus think the Jews got to Israel in 1948. To Jews, stand tall and place your Hanukkah in the window for all to see. To our Christian friends, we know so many of you are with us. You will receive the blessings foretold in the Bible. Genesis 12:3, for your solidarity. I quote the Almighty. Quote, I will bless those who bless Israel. Now to some announcements. At the Edwin Black Show and our companion YouTube site, we have just released more compelling and unnerving episodes. First, our first two Swords of Iron War coverage done just after the October 7 massacres. Second, we released the tragically validated episode from June of this year, Farhud Day 2023, in which I commemorated the Arab Nazi pogrom of 1941 and asked where such a monstrous bloodletting could happen next. In that episode, you will tragically hear me say it won't happen in Morocco or Syria, but more likely in Israel and then the United States of America. It pains me to be right. Third, we released our latest produced iteration of my popular Unanswered Questions series. Check those episodes at the Edwin Black Show or our YouTube channel. You will find them, as I say, unsettling and unnerving. My tour continues. In a few days, on Monday, December 11th, I will host in a congressional event with author Ken Abramowitz the launching of the third edition of his prescient book, The Multi-Front War. In January, I deliver a 5-event series in Florida, 3 daily events with the Gross Family Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism at the Holocaust at Florida Atlantic University, Boca Raton Synagogue, and then Palm Beach Gardens, Chabad, and then I cross the state to Tampa, where I appear at the University of South Florida, Chabad. Internationally in February, it's a return to Mexico City for a powerful, community-wide 4-event series sponsored by Yad Vashem. In March of next year, I keynote the Canadian Privacy Conference in Montreal, and then much more from Hillcrest Jewish Center in Queens to an exciting return to Australia, and that is probably Queensland. Get details of all my appearances at edwinblack.com/events, where my team has restored hundreds of prior event flyers going back some 15 years. And let us meet up in your city. Stand tall. Warning, children and sensitive people out of the room now. Now, please. You don't have to be a child, you just need to be sensitive. This is not for you. Okay, let me cover several items. First, more details of the hostages and atrocities are now coming in and being published. Again, please leave the room now if you cannot take these details. I read from the testimony. Quote, our team commander saw several female soldiers who were shot in the crotch, intimate parts, the vagina, or shot in the breast. This seemed to be a systematic genital mutilation of a group of victims, close quote. She added, quote, our unit has seen bodies that were beheaded or had limbs cut off and mutilated. One young woman came in with no legs. They had been cut off. We saw several heads, one with a large kitchen knife still embedded in the neck, close quote. In addition, from Hamas-made GoPro videos, we see a terrorist who had cut off a woman's breasts and played with them after he had raped her. One survivor of the music festival he hid under some bloody bodies stated he saw a beautiful young woman being gang-raped by 10 Hamas men while being beaten savagely. She called out for her attackers, quote, just kill me. Finally, when they were done, they did indeed shoot her in the head. An infant was found roasted alive in an oven. I've seen the photographs. Others were mutilated alive, finger by finger. I saw a gleeful vivisection of an infant recorded by a GoPro. There are hundreds of these sadistic and ghoulish cases. I refer you to a terrible website you must know about, publishing the war crime documentation videos. It is Hamas-massacre.net. That is Hamas-massacre.net. This is the documentation we must confront, just as we did after the Holocaust, but this is a magnitude worse. When this is done, there will be war crime trials in Jerusalem, I assure you, and this documentation will be vital to that process. Despite all the rape and violence against women, the world of women's advocacy and rights has remained silent. Barack Obama has said nothing, and in fact called for understanding the Hamas massacre. Understanding? His friend, Obama's friend, Alan Dershowitz, rightly disowned Obama, regretted ever befriending him, and vociferously called him a, quote, enemy of the Jewish people and Israel. That, Alan Dershowitz, is a correct assessment, but what took you so long? Michelle Obama, what a coward. People everywhere are asking publicly and privately, where is she? We all remember she led the global outrage when Boko Haram kidnapped 200 Nigerian schoolgirls. Remember Michelle when she clamored, bring back our girls? But nothing for Israeli and Jewish girls subjected to the worst imaginable sex crimes and violence. Michelle, I am no longer with you. Where is the Me Too movement? Silent on these atrocities? Or is it Me Too unless a Jew? Where is the National Organization of Women, Planned Parenthood, the Women's March, the Democratic Women's Caucus infused with Jew hatred, Emily's List, and the UN Women's Organization for 2 months, all silent and all remaining silent, despite many media requests and pleas from the victims and their families? Where are the bias and hate police? A member of Maryland's Hate and Bias Task Force publicly declared the rapes were all faked. Many of her peers across the country supported the Hamas massacres. Black Lives Matter, not the movement of people, I know these people, but the organization of scoundrels and criminals, the group that expressed solidarity with the atrocities. How stupid is this organization? Don't they know that the Middle East Arabs murdered and enslaved tens of millions of innocent black Africans for 1,000 years before the Atlantic slave trade began? Black Israelis are asking, where is the voice of BLM when it comes to Israeli, Sudanese, Ethiopian, Eritrean, Black Hebrew, and other people of color in the Jewish state? Not black enough for you? Now BLM wants my support? Forget it. Never again. Climate change enthusiasts, led by the angry Swedish brat Greta Thunberg, who stood before thousands, repeat thousands, of cheering climate activists that praised Hamas terror and expressed solidarity with the killers. It is not just Greta. I've seen numerous other climate change activists aggressively championing the Hamas terror cause and calling for the total genocide and destruction of Jews. And I'm supposed to believe these twisted, deviant climate activist minds when they cry out for climate action? Never again. Don't give me your statistics. I now have all the data I need. And it is probably the stupidest alignment in the history of mankind or womankind. We see trans and gay activists vituperate solidarity with Hamas. One group had a huge sign, no trans liberation without Palestinian liberation. Don't they know that if they set 1 foot in Gaza or the West Bank, they will be tied up, escorted to a rooftop, and thrown to their death, or hung from a construction crane until their necks crack? These fools are as bad as turkeys united for Thanksgiving. all the liberal and progressive organizations Jews used to support. So many of them have either been silent or vocally supportive of the mass atrocities. The diversity, equity, and inclusion organizations, the bias units, deny any sympathy for the attacks on Jews in this country, in the colleges, on street corners, in their communities. DEI, you have now been exposed for the human rights frauds that you are. Yeah, it's great to be for humanitarian causes and for human rights, unless you don't consider Jews human. Next, we return to the subjects of so-called innocent civilians in Gaza. Where are they? This is a self-confessed, bragging, multi-generational culture of death and hate. Now the documentation is out that civilians broadly assisted in attacking the kibbutzim, while the killers and rapists were looting and murdering. Large groups of kids and men were cheering them on in the room, helping to capture those Jews who tried to escape, and then grabbing possessions to take back as massacre booty. Some of these kibbutzim were the most liberal and peace advocating in all of Israel, the woke of the woke, yet they were the first to be raped, murdered, and beheaded. How many so-called innocent civilians in Gaza jeered and threw rocks at the Red Cross ambulances escorting released hostages? How many called home to brag to their parents and friends and were encouraged to return to their murder spree and kill more Jews before the sun set? The talk of a two-state solution, it's nonsense. Show me one, repeat, one Gazan who advocates for a two-state solution living in peace side by side with Israel. Show me one Gazan that does not celebrate the massacres. Hell, they are being celebrated on campuses from Harvard to Berkeley. What do you think they're doing in Gaza? Show me one Gazan, one who wants the hostages released. There will be no two-state solution. The Arabs had a five-state solution in 1920 when the League of Nations invented modern Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, modern Hejaz, and modern Egypt, plus one Jewish state in Israel. Then another two-state solution was created in 1922 when 73% of the Jewish state intended was carved off to create the completely Churchill-invented state of Jordan. The Arabs have refused all efforts to create two states. First in 1919, when Amir Faisal and Chaim Weizmann signed their two-state peace treaty in Eilat. Then during the years of the League of Nations mandate. Then in 1937 with the League's Peel Commission, which tried to create two states back then. Then in 1948 with the UN Partition Plan, which led to the first Arab-Israeli war. Then after each and every one of those wars since 1948, like a broken clock that can't get past 11 p.m. Remember all the peace plans of all the presidents and all the prime ministers in our lifetime. And then came the Oslo Accords in the 1990s, the Abraham Accords in this decade, and Trump's mega billion-dollar, quote, deal of the century. They don't want peace. They are addicted to massacre. Arab rioters massacred and raped Jewish communities in Fez, Morocco in 1912, in Hebron in 1929, in Constantine, Algeria in 1934, in Tripoli, Libya in 1945, and of course in Iraq in June of 1941, which is the Farhud that I wrote about. We have been here before. The Arab Street is well traveled, and it seems there's no exit for its travelers. Right now, Israel will continue to destroy Hamas, fighter by fighter, tunnel by tunnel, and infrastructure by infrastructure. Within the fast few hours of this day, the strategy of flooding the tunnels, which the Egyptians invented several years ago, has flushed out hundreds of terrorists today, and they are being taken into custody under the laws of war to be interrogated and brought to justice, just like the Nazis before them. Remember, the Mideast Arabs inherited Hitler's legacy. They are the carriers of the swastika and the torch. The International Higher Arab Committee in the 1930s and 40s, led by Haj Amin al-Husseini, formed a broad military, spiritual, and diplomatic alliance during the worst years of World War II. They had the oil and Germany needed it. 3 divisions that they created of Waffen-SS to fight in the trenches, and they operated from Paris to Palestine. Husseini constantly implored Hitler to send more Jews to death camps in Poland. Hitler was the hero of the Arab street, and his name even became the second most popular name for newborn babies, right after Muhammad. Check your internet for this name. Hitler Tantawi was one of Egypt's biggest generals. And now for the terrifying topic of today's show, which declares the world war we find ourselves in. The war in the tunnels of Gaza is just half the war. The other half is being played out and waged out on every hour of every day in every corner of the country and every other country. American Jews on campus are blockaded in their dorm rooms, their lunch rooms, and study rooms. 70% of them report they hide their identity. That includes my daughter. A group of them appeared before Congress this week to plead for action. The universities have become hellish hate centers of lower education and unbridled and administratively supported anti-Semitic agitation and infiltration into our newsrooms, our boardrooms, our schoolrooms, our medical treatment rooms, and courtrooms, as the law schools, medical schools, education schools, and history departments cultivate uninformed, misinformed, and intellectually deformed students who have become idiot experts spouting idiot expertise and historical mythology. The low point for the American Academy came when the presidents of UPenn, Harvard, and MIT could not say in Congress whether calling for the extermination or genocide of Jews was hate speech. This was in Congress under sworn testimony. With the world watching, they were asked over and over again, smug and repug. They evaded the answer and couldn't actually reply. Defund these organizations, close your checkbooks, transfer your students out to another campus. Don't advertise or associate with them. Don't hire their students. Check canarymission.org. Don't hire them. Take sides and take names, for those names are taking sides, and it is not yours. Jews are being passed up by bus drivers, taxis, and Uber drivers at the airport and on city streets. I have a video that I just received a few hours ago of a Jewish woman, a patron in a California restaurant, just denied the use of a bathroom because she was a Jew. Jewish stores are being boycotted, protested, blockaded, and damaged, just like the brown shirts, the Nazis from 1933 to 1939. Jews are attacked, even killed, for being Jewish. This is all within recent days. This hell is not going to go away. It will not get better. My predictions are arriving faster than I ever expected. Palestinian protesters are disruptive, violent, and now unafraid to say the bad part out loud. Gas the Jews. Hitler was right. And ladies and gentlemen, we have very few allies to help the Jewish people. We are alone in this struggle. I must declare, by the pain and suffering invested in me and my people, by the 50 years plus of saying never again and recognize when, by the reality exploding before my eyes, that we are now in a world war. Officially, it is not World War III. It is the war no one wants me to identify. It is the global struggle from Dagestan to Detroit. It is World War J is upon us. The war against the Jews. We must acknowledge it and fight back. First, educate yourself. I've noticed a huge spike in my books because people want to learn the truth. There is no apartheid in Israel. There is no genocide in Gaza. There is no occupation in Gaza or the West Bank. There are no Palestinian refugees. There are no genuine refugee camps. It is all staged. The Jews did not poison the wells. The Jews did not drain Christian blood from babies to make Passover matzah. We did not steal the chips from the chocolate chip cookies, and we are not violating international law. But idiots are chanting that we did. A recent survey of American students showed the vast majority support the chant from the river to the sea. But 53% of them couldn't name the river or the sea in question. Some thought it might be the Caribbean. About 10% thought that Yasser Arafat was actually Israel's first president. More than 25% had never heard about the Oslo Accords, and many thought it did not even exist. I myself gave a lecture some weeks ago at one of America's leading universities, and not a single one of them had ever heard of the Normandy invasion. Ladies and gentlemen, our intellectual highways are filled with drunk drivers, half blinded, with faulty brakes. It's not just the Palestinians who have been at this game for many years, infiltrating protest groups, but many innocent and unthinking ordinary young people and other Americans who tear down and deface posters of kidnapped hostages. They are worse than stupid. They are deliberately made to be misinformed. The Democratic Party will not be hijacked in 2 years, but next year, as the Palestinian protesters follow through on threats to disrupt, blockade, and protest the Democratic Convention next year. They have become a political force, and that force will push out the reasonable Democrats who stand up for the Jewish community, such as Chuck Schumer and Richie Torres from the Bronx, who I met just a couple nights ago. After the next convention, the platform will be utterly changed. The voter dynamic will be utterly changed, and the agenda will be openly to destroy Israel, and with extreme speed, and simultaneously dispossess the Jews of America with a program of violence, exclusion, special assessments, expulsion, eminent domain actions, fairer prosecutions, clawback, and restitution programs. Every Jew will be labeled a settler and a colonist, or a colonialist, part of a suicidal group, and the Goebbels rule will succeed. A lie told long enough becomes the truth. The Democratic Party quickly will go back to its well-established roots. They dispossessed the American Indian in the Trail of Tears. They formed the KKK as their action hand and fought for British slavery. They installed Jim Crow and made lynching an evil American pastime. They expelled the Japanese Americans into concentration camps. They let the Jews die during the Holocaust, closed our embassies, refused to liberate even one concentration camp, and made it easy for IBM and other Wall Street giants to make the Third Reich a roaring success. They enticed black men out of their families to fatherless ghettos with the ADC program. They opposed civil rights legislation, and they will repeat that history, a history they cannot escape. It will all happen next year, and then after the election, unless America makes a different choice. I urge you to place your hand in the socket of history and wake up. If the Jews go, everyone else is next. It happened that way in Germany. We must educate, cooperate, litigate, litigate, litigate. And remember, this time we're fighting back. We resist those who wish to eradicate. If we do, we have a chance, a 50-50 chance of surviving. If we continue to sleep with our enemies and fail to make common cause with our true friends, we in this country and many countries will become yet another singed page of crumpled Jewish history. Please, I am sick of being right. I was right on the next Farhud being in Israel. It happened in October. I will be right on the first cities to expel Jews. They'll be in Michigan. But on this matter, I beg to be wrong. Please prove me wrong. If there is a God in heaven, I beseech you, make me wrong. And now I will take your questions. All right, let's go with the first one here. From the Watch Party in the Villages. Hi, guys, I'll be there in January. How much of the Democratic Party hates Israel and the Jews? Is it just the squad? No. Let me clear this up. It's not just the squad. The squad is just the part you hear about the most. It is actually the base of the Democratic Party, especially the younger base of the Democratic Party. And so what you're going to see is Democrats at the local and the state level bring their anti-Israel and anti-Jewish agendas to the local jurisdiction. And that will have an impact on the state party and eventually the national party. And so I would say we're looking at a vastly more anti-Semitic Democratic Party than I ever thought was feasible this early on. And they will primarily pressure those who don't agree with them. Thank you for your question. From the Watch Party in Newton, how do we fight the campuses? Okay, I gave you an idea of how to fight the campuses. One is to defund them, but I have something more concrete. I want you, everybody in any state can go to their local state attorney general and challenge the 501c3. That's the tax exempt foundation that gives these guys oxygen. And people can go to the IRS and they can challenge that nationally. Legislation has already been introduced on the federal level to take away the tax exempt status of certain of these colleges. I myself, the well-known investigation of charitable organizations called Funding Hate, and we came that close to revoking the tax exempt status of America's biggest charity, the Ford Foundation. So you can do it. And as soon as you get off the show, find out the Attorney General's name and number, go to their trust division and challenge the local fundraising apparatus in your state. Thank you very much. Oh, and by the way, don't hire anyone from these colleges. Don't hire them. They're infected. They're bad. And their names, they're hiding their names because they don't want you to know. But the names are being circulated, especially by canarymission.org. What is the worst college for Jews in the United States? This is from the Watch Party in Chicago. It's hard to say which is the worst because they are all racing to the bottom. I can tell you what some of the leading centers of Jewish hatred are, where the students are afraid. That would be UC Berkeley, University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, the University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, NYU, MIT, where they developed the mapping program to identify the location, phone number, and address of every Jewish institution and individual in Massachusetts, which has now been probably replicated across the country. And lawsuits are being filed against these groups on a regular basis. I myself lecture on the campus, and when I'm lecturing, I'm surrounded by SWAT team. I mean, inches from my shoulders. My lectures are guarded by police. Special arrangements are made. And this is just for me to talk about history. You know, it really exposes the hypocrisy of the left and the colleges. These guys, these snowflakes, were so worried about the crime of misgendering. Maybe some guy with a beard and mustache who wants to throw on some lipstick and some high-heeled shoes and says, gee, I'm a woman now. So worried about misgendering and cisgendering and all kinds of other gendering and micro-transgressions and all of these different ways to make people not get anxious. And what do they do to the Jews? They beat up on them. They trap them on the campus. They chase them down the hall. They march outside of their dorm rooms. They humiliate them in the lunchroom, in the cafeteria. It just shows it's a huge fraud. It's a huge fraud. It was just about microaggressions for these snowflakes, and always the Jews are excluded. Thank you very much, Chicago. Maybe I'll get there again. All right, here is a question from Liz W. I'm not sure where Liz is. Do you think Israel will finally tell the U.S. and the world it can no longer back a Palestinian state, or is this impossible? Jordan can be Palestine. Jordan is Palestine. Okay? 80% of the citizens are so-called Palestinian. Of course, remember, the Arabs have faked this identity. That's identity theft. There is no Arab in the Middle East who called himself a Palestinian before May of 1964, when the Arab League and the KGB formed the PLO, and then they committed identity theft. All the Palestinian organizations were Jewish and Zionist. The Anglo-Palestine Bank, the Palestine Orchestra, the Palestine Football Club, the Jewish Agency for Palestine, the Palestine Post. Even if you look at the UN resolutions, 181, they don't call for a Palestinian state. They call for a Jewish and an Arab state, because the Arabs said there's no such place as Palestine. And when the Jordanians invaded in 1948, they renamed Judea and Samaria the West Bank of the Jordan River. They renamed it that. And then everybody swore allegiance to Jordan. And they said, we are Jordanian citizens. So Jordan was created in 1922 to give yet another state. It was yet another of the many, many two-state solutions carved out from 73% of internationally agreed to be Jewish land. So I think that Israel will never, in my lifetime or my daughter's lifetime, and God should grant in my granddaughter's lifetime, agree to a Palestinian state, because a Palestinian state would only make 10 minutes away what was previously 10 miles away. And I assure you, no matter what the United States says, Israel, the people of Israel, they are scarred for a generation. Everybody knows somebody who was killed, raped, kidnapped, defaced, mutilated. Israel's going to say that. Thank you, Liz, for your question. Here's one from Lance. In the school of thought that Hamas belongs to, do their religious beliefs point to the total annihilation of the Jewish people, or is their goal captivity and slavery? Well, it's actually all of that, Lance. Just a few minutes ago, I heard an Islamic scholar talking about how the enemy of the Arab people, of the Muslim people, and we have to distinguish between Arabs and Muslims, which I'll do in just a moment, can be raped and should be raped. And this was a woman scholar, because they are possessed by the Muslim conqueror. Now, this is actually the same theory that was used by the Arabs to enslave millions of non-Muslim Africans below North Africa, and to enslave the people of Sudan, to enslave the people of Zanzibar, of the Belgian Congo. And I can't tell you how many millions they killed, because the census numbers just don't exist for those populations. It was the same Islamic tenets. That which your right hand possesses, you may do anything with. And why there's an impulse to rape a woman, even if you do possess her. This is a theory of slavery that was not endorsed by any other slave culture in the history of mankind. Thank you, Lance. Let's go to another question. This here is Marlene in Detroit. I don't know if she knows Lance. Who is financing these colleges and their hate? Got a piece of paper? Qatar and Iran. Let's talk about Qatar. Qatar, which funds $1.8 billion to Hamas and is the seat of authority for Hamas. They're hanging around in their five-star hotels in Qatar. Qatar has given $173 million to Georgetown. They gave $603 million to Cornell, $129 million to Northwestern outside of Chicago. These are all Department of Education verified numbers. And that is only the beginning of a long, long story, and I'm sure we'll do a future episode on it. So it is Qatar. Qatar is the evil player in this whole deal. Qatar is the one that is acting as the two-faced middleman between the Hamas terrorists, the Israelis, and the United States. They're the pivot and the fulcrum of negotiations. We have a huge military base right outside the capital of Qatar. We're constantly, gee whiz, thanking Qatar, but Qatar should be unseated. And possibly it will be Saudi Arabia that displaces them. That's another reason why Iran and Qatar signaled the beginning of this horrible violence that we have seen unfold. Thank you very much. Charles Jacobs, who wants to know why I look younger. That's impossible. I'm aging twice as fast with this topic. He also says, what should we do with our failing Jewish leadership? ADL, the federations, the American Jewish Committee, the liberal rabbinate. Well, that's a great question. I know you've authored a great book on this topic, and I had your co-author in my episode, Bold Authors. Charles, I believe that the first thing that Jews can do is make their own decisions about which Jewish organizations they will align with and support. The American Jewish Committee, guess what? It's a committee. The ADL, guess what? It's self-appointed, but it's the grassroots groups, the groups that listen to its members, not its donors. Remember, the American Jewish Committee and the ADL listen to their donors. And if somebody plops down a big piece of money, they'll either say anything or do anything or refrain from doing anything that would be too violative of that dollar grant. That's not how it is with the grassroots groups. Americans for a Safe Israel, Emet, and Stand With Us, wonderful group Stand With Us. That's not how it is with the other leading organization, and that would be the Brandeis Center, which is filing lawsuits left and right. They probably are running out of paper. They filed so many lawsuits and so many more are being planned. Jews need to take control of their own destiny. I will say this, Charles. I know you've assailed the Anti-Defamation League, and I know why, but I will say that the head guy of the Anti-Defamation League did grow a pair, and he came out on television, and he did speak eloquently and boldly and forcefully for the Jews. So I think the liberal Jews are slowly waking up. They need to understand that when the trains get rolling, they'll be in the first boxcar. The same way that these kibbutzim that were so woke of the woke Israelis were among the first to be beheaded. Thank you, Charles. Let's see what we have here. Here's from Wes in San Francisco. Edwin claimed that environmental activist Greta Thunberg openly expressed praise and support for Hamas and their attack on Israel. Upon researching this, it is in fact false, but has been spread by hard-right media outlets. She expressed support for the Palestinian people being bombed. Hamas was never mentioned. Does anyone really believe that anyone who expresses support and sympathy for the plight of the Palestinian people is in fact a supporter of the Hamas terrorists? Well, first of all, you are wrong. I just saw a video, not only of Greta Thunberg supporting Hamas and wearing a keffiyeh and supporting the Palestinian people. And when you say the Palestinian people, that is virtually, at this point, synonymous with Hamas. And don't give me your fake surveys. It's like this. When you're in the West Bank and when you're in Gaza, you're trained as a culture to fake out the survey. Second of all, they all have the same goals. They all have the same goals, but they differ on which group is best equipped to deliver them to those goals. Is it Fatah? Is it Hamas? Is it PIJ, etc.? I saw on national television, on Democracy Now!, I saw a climate activist bringing greetings from the climate activist community working with Native and Indigenous Americans to spread the cause of Hamas and the Palestinians. So here's what I say. If after these atrocities occurred, and after the Palestinian Authority, not the Hamas political party, the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah endorsed them and said it was Israel's fault, if Greta Thunberg and the climate activist community want to endorse that, forget about your statistics. Don't measure your icebergs and come running to me. I am measuring the amount of dead bodies that these people are tolerating. And she never said anything in support of the hostages. The latest polls show that Hamas right now openly is surging on the West Bank. That's why there hasn't been an election in the West Bank since 2007, because the PA is afraid if it does, that Hamas will take over and murder all its rivals at Fatah. I hope that answers your question. In my mind, I don't want to hear any more from any more climate activists until they can fix their mind on supporting justice in this cause. Let's see. Here's one from Eve. Raping your enslaved women was not embraced by American enslavers. Yes, it was embraced. It was embraced and with a Christian connotation. That doesn't mean that what I said was not correct. You know, there was an interview with that, I believe it was either CBS or CNN, did with one of the Hamas officials. And she asked him, what about the rape, all these hostages? He said, well, there are hostages. He didn't deny it. And she said, but Israeli soldiers aren't raping Palestinian women. They're not only are they not raping Palestinian women, they're giving them maps, they're giving them fuel, they're giving them way out of the war zone that they created. And that's not genocide. What is genocide is the calculated decision to go in to the Gaza border area and wipe out every single Jewish person there. And in those battle plans that they have been captured, it said that their mission was to rape and humiliate. I'd like to say this for the tender among us. It's not just the women who were raped. It's the men who were raped as well. Okay? So I hope that has answered your question. Here's another one here this is from Melanie in Jacksonville. Can illegals vote? Now, that's a great question, Melanie. Illegals can vote, immigrants can vote, and they can't vote. In many jurisdictions, I believe I'm living in one of them, in Rockville, I could be corrected. I know Evanston, Illinois is one of them. And in many cities, immigrants, illegals, students who have transferred in from the Middle East, Jew haters, they can vote in local elections. And what does that mean? That means that they can create their own city council, their own city ordinances. They can impact the state level. They can impact the slating committees. They can impact the platforms and have a local impact on national politics. Anyone who thinks that's not the case can just say these two words, Mayor Daley in Chicago, and you see how one guy in a local area could impact national politics. So yes, that is going to be one of the keys of the Democratic success and the Democratic attempt to completely dispossess the Jewish community in America, starting within months. Lance in Michigan, this is to Wes. He says, I know Muslim families in Dearborn, Michigan, who support Hamas on the basis that they are of the same blood and religion. I really believe that there are sympathizers with terrorists in this world. Let me just reflect on this, a statement, not a question. You can't say it's all Muslims. You cannot say that. And you can't say it's all Arabs. You can't say that. Because remember, the Muslim world, Israel has vibrant relations with the Muslim majority countries of the Asian steppes, of India, which is probably the second most populous Muslim population, which contains probably the second greatest Muslim population in the world after Indonesia. And the Muslims in India are a vastly different community. The Muslims of Bahrain are a vastly different community. They're more modernized, they're more westernized. They're leaving behind their past of enslaving people and not living with their cousins. The king of Bahrain came out vibrantly opposed to the Hamas massacre. The MBS of Saudi Arabia is just waiting for Hamas to be destroyed so he can resume this incredible new relationship with Israel that was getting ready to break out before all of this hostility and massacre occurred. Egypt, right now, write this down, is constructing a third fence to prevent the Palestinians from crossing Rafah and getting into the Sinai. This group of Palestinians who believes the things that you have talked about, that I have talked about, which is different from other Muslims and Arabs in other parts of the world. When they got to Jordan, they tried to overtake the society that caused Black September. When they got to South Lebanon, they tried to overtake the Lebanese society. When they got to Egypt, they almost caused an insurrection of sorts with the Muslim Brotherhood. I have heard that many of the Arab rulers are saying, when you're done with this, we can go back to really establishing peace. And guess what? It can be a real peace. It can be a peace from India to the Arabian Peninsula, through Israel, right up through Southern Europe. One of Biden's ideas, which would include a railway, internet hubs, data corridors. There's just a lot that could be done. But some people don't want peace because they're devoted to war. Remember, in the event of peace, the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, is out of business, and they don't prefer to be out of business. Okay, here is another remark from Liz W. Where are you from, Liz? I'm not sure. The Palestinians themselves overwhelmingly support what Hamas did. So to say that people who express support for Palestinians don't support Hamas is dishonest. That is correct. And I'm trying to get this clear to my friends in the Bay Area. They're making these subtle distinctions that no one really makes outside the coffee houses of San Francisco. I see you're in South Pasadena, Florida, and I believe that's in Tampa Bay. And I'll see you in January when I appear at USF again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're basically out of time. So hold, please, for my closing word of wisdom, just 1 minute away. Get access alerts, participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show and prior episodes at The Edwin Black Show. You can follow me at Edwin Black Book on that thing called X, as well as Facebook. And now, for my closing word of wisdom, you cannot turn off the darkness, but you can turn on the light. Thank you, world. I'm zooming out. Bless all of you. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. See you soon.